What's up, everybody? Eli Berkovitz here. Another episode of The Pack. Very excited about this one. Our first show since the draft completed, and we have a special guest with us here tonight, Daire Carragher. I hope I pronounced all of that right. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I guess we'll get to that. Daire, obviously, you are in Ireland. It is very late by you right now, so I especially appreciate you taking the time. And excited to hear your thoughts on the draft. But did I butcher your name just so I can know going forward?
Listen, everyone has their own way of saying it. I respect the Daire. Everyone likes to go that route because of Jair. I mean, it should be phonetically similar. It's technically Dara. I don't care whatever people call it, whatever people want to call me. I've heard a lot worse. I've heard a lot better. No, but thank you so much for having me. Eli. Obviously, this is a great show. I love tuning in. I really love the episode with Paul before the draft. So yeah, excited to be on.
Yeah, no, we appreciate having you. And maybe next time you come on, some of my co-hosts will be able to join as well. But for now, we'll break down some of the draft, get a little bit into mini camp. But before we do, first off, this just randomly happened yesterday, and you being from Ireland, I thought I would have to ask you, do you know of like the Irish band Amble?
Yes, I do know of them, yeah.
Oh yeah? Okay. So randomly I found some of their music the other day, and now I've been listening to it all weekend. So it's kind of a good
They make good stuff. They make really good stuff.
Yeah, just a good vibe, just a good like relaxing kind of vibe to it. So
well, while you have been doing that, I've been engrossed in the Kendrick Lamar and Drake diss tracks. So we're kind of going from your country to my country. We've done a complete switch.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I have no idea what's going on with Drake and Kendrick. The memes online seem pretty fun, so I'll take that. I don't really get the context of most of them, but it seems like it's getting pretty nasty. So we'll see how that goes. But looking at real quick before we get to the draft, just some small pieces from minicamp. The Packers signed 3 players who was part of the minicamp, at least that we know of: wide receiver Dimitri Stanley, wide receiver Julian Hicks, and offensive lineman Laceta Smith. I haven't really heard a ton about Smith or Hicks, but Dimitri Stanley, Matt LaFleur mentioned, and a few other people that were at the practice mentioned a very impressive one-handed snag he made and just some good routes he ran and just kind of overall looked really good. So it should be interesting. We thought maybe they would draft a receiver this year, even though, it was kind of all over the place. I guess I'm curious on your opinion. For some reason, wide receiver this year was talked about, like we always talk about receiver, I guess, but when you have, at least 4, if not 5 or 6 receivers, you feel pretty good about. I personally didn't think drafting a receiver made a ton of sense, but people did. And I even heard the day of the draft that their round 1 target, like at least to someone that I trust decently well, thought the receiver could really be the move in the first round. Did you ever think that was a need or a possibility, or are you happy that they decided not to draft one with what they have?
Yeah, no, I think they made the right decision. I knew for a fact, well, nothing's for sure with the Packers, but like I had a very, very firmly confident opinion that they weren't going to draft any receivers rounds 2 through 6. I think if they ever wanted a receiver, it was going to be, the only knock is they maybe don't have the guy in that room right now. They've got a lot of very high end wide receiver 2s. I'm so confident that like maybe Dontavion Wicks can become that role. We still don't know Christian Watson. That's what he was drafted to become. Mm-hmm. But I think unless Brian Thomas had a fell to them, I don't think and even then I really don't think they would have drafted him. But he was the only guy that was ever really in the conversation for me. Obviously, as you say, every year fans are gonna want to talk about receivers, and so this year was no different, and I'm sure next year will be no different. People love to talk about receivers, and can't blame them.
Yeah, no, it's always a fun one to talk about. I also just feel like it's usually most draft classes, it's like the deepest position is usually receiver. So, but it's funny you said that because I actually multiple times said similar, that it was like either draft a receiver early that you feel like is just head and shoulders better than what you have, or don't draft anyone, because I don't see any spot where you're drafting another mid-round receiver. Where is he fitting in this group? So I agree with your assessment on that. I just think it would have been, not the best use of resources to draft a receiver early of all years this year. So let's just jump right into it early in the draft. Night 1, of course, Jordan Morgan, 25th overall. It was an interesting night. You had a lot of defensive players fall much further than people thought. Mitchell and Arnold getting there a few picks before the Packers. Of course, DeJean being there, Kool-Aid McKinstry being there, Nate Wiggins being there. What were your thoughts as they got on the clock at 25, or as they were kind of getting close to being on the clock? Because I thought maybe a trade up could be possible. Were you in on Cooper DeJean? Were you in on one of the other defensive backs, or were you kind of thinking offensive line the whole time?
Yeah, well, I mean, it felt like for the longest time that O-line was going to be the pick, and then Cooper DeJean just got so much hype that week
Yeah.
before the draft that it felt like, oh man, this might actually be the guy they go with. As the draft went on, I was kind of just counting down Kerry and Arnold because that was a dream scenario for me. It turns out that I did debate along with a lot of people that for some reason we convinced ourselves that the Packers wanted an outside quarterback. Surely the Packers come back and say, no, we actually really like Carrington Valentine and they seem pretty content with him starting this year. So that's fair enough. Jordan Morgan is just about as Packers of a pick as you're going to get. He's a slightly lower floor, but super, super high ceiling, amazing athlete at a premium position. He is just name every Packers first round pick: Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn Gary, Jair Alexander. They all follow this mold, and so it's really no different with Jordan Morgan. So yeah, I've got a chance to look at some of his film, and there is a lot to like. There is also you worry about the strength and how he's held up with bull rushing before he's really been cleaned out by some of the better power rushers in college football. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of time before he adjusts to that fully in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first off, just I probably should have mentioned this in the intro, but for everyone watching right now, we're going to have Corey Listochi, and I might be botching that name as well. Rough day for me with the names, but a huge Penn State guy, writes for diehard Penn State fans. So he's going to come on at the end of the show to talk a bit of Kalen King with us, which I'm excited to hear about from him. But yeah, back to Jordan Morgan. I agree. I mean, he's someone that, like, I'll be honest, I kind of just convinced myself they were going defense and likely cornerback in the first round. I just think I looked at, number one, the group of offensive linemen this year. It was basically like Jordan Morgan and maybe Kingsley Sumatea, maybe Graham Barton, but like so many of the main top guys, either you knew were not getting to 25 or were just not within their thresholds, whether it was size or athleticism or this or that. So it was like there were not many options. It felt like Jordan Morgan might have been one of the only real top-end tackle options that they were even considering. That would not surprise me. So I was convinced we were going corner. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Morgan, like once it's like, okay, we're going offensive line, of course, that's not a surprising pick to me. Very Packers-like. And then I guess before we get on to the later parts of the draft, where do you kind of see him translating best? Like, do you think he should compete for the left tackle job? Do you think he should play one of the guard spots? I mean, or right tackle even. I don't know. I feel like benching Rasheed Walker right now maybe is not the best use of, if LaFleur always talks about his best five. But how do you kind of see that going?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they will probably still roll with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Morgan feels like a guard starting out to me. Now he can definitely develop into a tackle. The other situation or scenario would be there's been talk that Josh Myers really hasn't locked down the center spot yet. You could make a case for Zach Tom becoming the center, which some people have said, that's his best position. That opens up the right tackle spot for Morgan, which again, that completely works. I mean, it's going to be the same cases every year. Get your best five on the field. The Packers draft these versatile offensive linemen for this reason. So, they want guys who can play 4 or 5 positions along the line. Elton Jenkins can just plug and play anywhere. You can say the same for Zach Tom. It sounds from what we've heard that you can say the same about Jordan Morgan now too. So that gives you so much flexibility. And when you can just get your best five on the field, you don't have to worry as much about, one injury completely compromising your offensive line. You can, if you have a really good sixth guy who can just go in and you can just shuffle people around, that's all you would ever want.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know why teams don't just do what the Packers do and draft versatile guys. Like that's why, I mean, I know Ross Uglum was a big proponent of this, but I was with him in the fact that I never really even considered Amarius Mims or Tyler Guyton or some of these bigger tackles. It's just like they've never done it. Like not, they really haven't even come close to that size. And it's like you've seen the success you've had with these guys. Why draft someone that could only play tackle and in some cases maybe only play right or left tackle, not even have, tackle versatility. So I love that strategy and I hope they stick to it. Keep bringing in versatile guys. But speaking of versatility, it doesn't stop at the offensive line. We know they go versatile everywhere. So let's go jump into the safeties before we get to the linebackers. So Packers, again, as usual, a bunch of draft picks. And what do? They double and even triple dip at certain positions, which is just what Brian Gutekunst does. And I think it's a great strategy as well. So they draft 3 safeties, Javon Bullard in the 2nd round, Evan Williams in the 4th, and Keaton Oladapo in the 5th. Just some of your general thoughts looking over some of their film, the kind of players they are, and kind of, Bullard, of course, being the top one drafted, you would expect to be the one that shines the most, but maybe, you have some confidence in Williams or Oladapo as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think they nailed all 3, to be quite honest with you. They were 3 of my favorite safeties in the whole class. Bullard in particular. Um, every single one of these guys can play a variety of roles. I think that was something that was intentional. The other main thing that sticks out is they're all high quality producers in college. So you talk about these guys like Morgan, for example, or Quay Walker in previous years, people who haven't exactly produced in college, and the Packers are kind of banking on their traits. These safeties almost feel like the opposite. They all, like Bullard has a pick 6 in a national championship game. The other 2 guys have each played thousands of snaps up in Oregon. So, there's a real, I like that trend that, you're probably going to hit on one of these guys, if not 2. I mean, in the ideal scenario, you hit on all 3. But yeah, I like what they bring. I think Bullard definitely, from what we even heard in at minicamp so far, feels like they're really planning on him to be the 2nd guy alongside McKinney as a true safety. The other 2 can mix around. Evan Williams has so much experience in the slot. Oladapo has experience as a nickel corner too, and a linebacker. So as a box safety. So these guys can play anywhere, and the Packers are just going to get very multiple on defense and mix up their roles. So yeah, big fan of drafting 3 guys at the one position. It worked before at running back when they found Aaron Jones. It kind of worked at receiver before when they found Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I like the strategy overall.
Yeah, I think it's like you said. I mean, you draft 2 or 3 at the same position, you would have to hope you're hitting at least 1, if not more. I mean, if you're drafting 3 at the same position, you don't hit any, a little bit rough. And I guess looking at those receivers, MVS being the one that hit, a little bit tough, but they were all day 3 picks. It wasn't like they were high picks. But yeah, I really like these safeties. Like you said, Bullard, I think, should be the clear option as the number 2 safety alongside McKinney. But what Evan Williams does as a blitzer and near the line of scrimmage is really exciting. And then I think Oladapo is just one of those, he could do it all. Like he's not like, the phrase, great at nothing, good at everything, or whatever, good at everything, great at nothing. Like he played, I think it was basically 800 snaps deep, 800 snaps in the slot, and like 750 snaps in the box. I mean, basically even across the board, playing everywhere a safety is going to play. So adding those 3 to Hafley's defense, I mean, before the draft, it was McKinney, Anthony Johnson, and like Zane Anderson and like Benny Sapp. I mean, guys that basically don't have any real NFL defense experience. And of course, I mean, 3 rookies won't either. But you couldn't just draft Bullard and be like, all right, we're good at safety. Like they needed to add bodies, and I'm happy they did. And you could say the same thing for linebacker. At the end of the day, I think a lot of people were surprised with the Tyron Hopper pick after Edgerrin Cooper in the 2nd round, and I'm curious about your opinion on that. But they're moving to a 4-3 defense, and even if you want to say, how often are they going to be in base? They'll be a nickel a ton. You only need 2 linebackers. Even if you're only putting 2 linebackers on the field every play, all you had behind Quay, all you had was Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie. You didn't even have really any depth there. Eric Wilson, he doesn't really play defense. You needed to draft at least 1, if not 2. They ended up drafting 2. They brought in a 3rd as a UDFA. But yeah, first, I guess your thoughts on Andrew Cooper. I was personally, I mean, he was my number one linebacker. I was very excited with that pick. And then Tyron Hopper, which I think in many fans' opinions was kind of like the surprise of the draft. But kind of how did you see all that?
Yeah, I mean they kind of they gave us something to cheer about with Cooper, and then reeled us a little back in picking Tyron Hopper, who everyone was kind of like, "What?" But we've seen other Packers picks in the past work out
Yeah.
just fine. So I mean, we all clamored for Amari Rogers before, and look how that one turned out. So uh, at the end of the day, we don't know enough about these guys. So I'll always give the Packers the benefit of the doubt. I feel that Brian Gutekunst has earned that right due to how well he's drafted over the last couple of years. So yeah, for what I've seen of them, I really like Cooper. I'm a little bit tentative that they've drafted. I really would have liked to pair Quay Walker with someone who's less athletic and more kind of heady IQ player. Quay is that maybe they're banking on Quay to take a significant leap, or maybe he already has taken that leap. Listen, he was very good last year, but maybe they really see him as this Mike linebacker of the deep quarterback of the defense who can call all the shots, and he could be that because I have my doubts that Cooper ever becomes that player. Cooper is a see ball, get ball maniac. Every defense needs him, and every defense would love a guy like him. So it'll be interesting to see how those two pair together because their styles feel a little similar to me. And you could argue that you should have a bit more diversification in terms of what your guys are good at in the second level of the defense. But yeah, I'm interested to see how it works out. I've heard some people, saying that Cooper could get a Defensive Player of the Year, and listen, he'll certainly or Defensive Rookie of the Year nominee, but he certainly has. He's going to get the reps to do so. He's going to come in and start right away. You would imagine. As for Hopper, he's going to start a core special teamer, and hopefully the Packers can find something in him that becomes a long-term impact guy down the road.
Yeah. I mean, first off, I thought it was interesting. I believe Andy or Ross, someone was tweeting that I think Hopper was actually in a Mike linebacker during minicamp, which I think a lot of people were surprised by. They were also saying maybe Xavier McKinney gets the green dot and he ends up, maybe being the quarterback of the defense. It'll be interesting to see. But I mean, when you add this much competition all over the defense, but especially I just like how they're kind of focusing on the middle of the field. Like I feel like that's been a place the Packers have been burned over and over, just wide open gaps over the middle. I think adding all these athletic safeties, athletic linebackers is going to help that a lot. And I mean, you see they're clearly confident in the cornerbacks they have by not, adding to that group. So I'm happy at least they're solidifying the middle of the field. And Hopper again, people were surprised, but like you said, the Packers do what the Packers do. Like they're not going by whatever big board you're following online or this, that. And especially I think in general in the NFL, once you're at day two, any like ideas about big boards and rankings, they basically just go out the window. I mean, you could make the argument even day one, but for sure once you're at day two, it's just like teams are going by what they prefer. And you'll see some of those guys that get drafted 100 picks before their consensus rankings in the middle of the second round because that's just, a team likes a guy. So I trust Goody. We'll see how it goes. But overall, looking at the class in general, 11 picks, obviously, I mean, only, I know a couple trades actually, not as much at the top, but some trades later. But how did you feel just in general? The draft ends Saturday night, or I guess for you, Sunday morning at that point. Just how did you feel about it? Did you like the class? Were you disappointed? Were you excited about it? What were just your general thoughts on it as a whole?
Yeah, I like the class. I think they did a really good job, especially day three. I thought they found some really good value guys that we might talk about. We'll obviously talk about Keelan King later. I'm excited to see what they find in Michael Pratt, if anything can come from that. Listen, on the whole, like this is one of the Packers set out to do. They got exactly what they set out to do. Is what I mean to say. They had needs obviously at safety, and they fully addressed that now. Like surely they should find a long term duo between McKinney and one of these guys to start at safety long term. You'd like to think that you can trust that they've rarely ever drafted a bust on offensive line early doors in any draft. So to have that track record going in and have Luke Butkus and Adam Stanovich still in the building there, who are so good at developing these guys. You have no reason but to feel confident about Jordan Morgan too. So on the whole, it felt like almost a safe draft from the Packers, but that's all it needed to be. They've knocked it out of the park the last couple of years, particularly last year, and now you're just kind of trying to round out what should be, the start of a Super Bowl window. And I maybe feel like they've done everything. If you want immediate impact, you've got Edgerrin Cooper. If you want, long term protection for your franchise QB, you've got Jordan Morgan. If you want the long term answer at safety, you've got one out of the three. So I really like what they did. I think they attacked positions well. They were a little below the consensus at times, but as you say, unless you're Howie Roseman and the Eagles, who seem to just draft the top guy on the consensus board to keep their fans happy every year, the consensus board doesn't really mean very much. So yeah, I was a big fan overall. How about you?
Yeah, it was. I actually, by the way, I mean, day 2 was very fun for me. Real quick, yeah, definitely.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely a change up, but I liked it. I mean, again, I would be lying if I did have the thought of cornerback early, and when I saw Quinyon Mitchell and Tyrion Arnold both available at whatever it was 22, 23. I wasn't even thinking Cooper DeJean. I've said it multiple times. I would have been thrilled if they drafted him, but I never really expected them to draft DeJean for whatever reason. I just thought they didn't see him as an outside corner. I didn't think they were going to draft him as a safety that high. I just didn't think it was going to happen. So Morgan, I like the pick, but I wouldn't say it's anytime you draft an offensive lineman, it's not the most exciting pick in the world. But then, yeah, day 2 and day 3, I loved. I mean, Cooper and Bullard were my number 1 and my linebacker and my number 1 safety. So that's basically, I can't believe, by the way, I knew there was someone that I forgot to mention, Marshawn Lloyd being that person. Very exciting pick. Like, basically for me, it was Jonathan Brooks. And then right behind him, I had Lloyd and Jalen Wright as like my 2 favorite behind him. So getting Lloyd there, I think will be a great compliment to Josh Jacobs. And then, of course, day 3, I actually think like Jacob Monk, another guy we haven't discussed yet. One of my favorite picks, honestly. Like, I just think he's going to end up being a guard for them or even their center long term and be really good. I just love his versatility. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the class. But just in general, what was your favorite pick, you would say?
My favorite pick, I would probably go with Javon Bullard. I love his college production. To pair that college production with, an elite RAS or relative athletic score, which he had, that's kind of all you're looking for as that long-term safety. And so, listen, he can play in the slot if you really need him to. He can play deep with McKinney if you really need him to. He can go up near the line of scrimmage and start hitting people if you really need him to. If they picked Javon Bullard in the first round, yeah, it would have been a little below the consensus value, but I really wouldn't have complained. He's that good of a player, and I think he's going to be really a real strong asset to this team immediately.
Yeah, number 1, I agree. I'm someone who, in general, it's like, yeah, you don't want to be the team that's consistently reaching in a major way, but I'm, of the belief that when you really love a player, you go and you got to do what you got to do to get him. And also a point you made a couple minutes ago that I really agree with is that they didn't need this draft to be one of those home run, out of the huge upside swing kind of drafts. Like you said, they basically built the upside of this roster over the last couple of years. And this year was just like, all right, we have some clear holes that we just need a little help at. We don't need to do anything crazy. We're going to draft 3 offensive linemen. We're going to draft 3 safeties. We're going to draft 2 linebackers. And that's basically going to be our whole class. Whatever, we grabbed a couple other pieces, but that's the way to do it. When you only have a couple holes and you did a really good job of team building, you go, you address those positions, and you prosper, as they say. So Corey is going to be on any moment now to talk about Kalen King, which I'm excited about. But before we get he's actually popping in right now. So, Corey, how you doing? Oh, well. Corey is gone. Corey was not interested. No.
Kalen King sucks.
Yeah, that would actually be pretty funny. Okay.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Eli, Daire, nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Really appreciate you taking the time. A lot of Packer fans, like I said, really excited about Kalen King, especially at that value. So I guess first, what were your general thoughts on him coming out of the 2023 season, and then we could kind of get into what happened from 2022 to 2023.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of the 2022 season, everyone thought Kalen King was going to basically just fit right in where Joey Porter Jr. left off, and that necessarily wasn't the case. The 2023 season for Kalen King was obviously a difficult one for him. It also didn't help that Penn State didn't see very many good quarterbacks or very many good passing attacks in general. So he was sort of judged by how he did against Marvin Harrison Jr., which, I understand, that is how maybe good corners should be judged, but that's still a really tough matchup. And he didn't have a very good day in Columbus that day. So that didn't help. And the quarterback position as a whole is such a position where you have to have confidence. And it's very clear that he began to struggle with the confidence in the second half of the season, making mistakes that we didn't see in 2022. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. He has the talent to be a fantastic corner. I mean, the first round grade before the 2023 season is probably a fair grade as far as his physical ability. But so much of playing corner is having that confidence. And he really, really lacked that confidence in the 2023 season.
Yeah. Did you think you saw that or saw some of those struggles even before the Ohio State game with Marvin Harrison, or did it really start to come on afterwards? I mean, just looking in general at his stats from 2022 to 2023, PFF, an 89 grade in 2022, 60.3 grade in 2023. In terms of coverage, he was a 90.6 and then only a 55.7 in 2023. His numbers, 18 pass defense in 2022, down to only 2 in 2023, 3 picks in 2022, 0 in 2023. So that is some major drop-offs in a number of categories. Any idea, was there maybe, some sort of injury that we don't know about or anything that you could attribute to all those struggles?
Yeah, I mean, the first one being in 2022, Joey Porter Jr. was there. And so teams were deciding to throw more towards Kalen King versus JPJ. And so that gave him a little bit more, reps and opportunity to make some of those plays. And then in 2023, Penn State's starting defense was pretty much never on the field until the Ohio State game. I mean, if you go back and look at the snap counts, there are games where starting linebackers have 12 snaps up into the Ohio State game. So there really wasn't that much opportunity to really rack in those maybe easy interceptions or pass deflections or whatnot. And the other part of it is Penn State, as you saw in the draft, had 2 defensive ends go in the first 3 rounds and probably have another 2 that will probably go in the first 2 rounds next year. So quarterbacks didn't have a lot of time to throw the football either. And that definitely played a role in some of those numbers. But no, I think really nobody knew how good maybe Kalen King was until the Ohio State game. And Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of had his way with him. And I think that was kind of maybe the turning point. But I mean, you even look at the Michigan game, Michigan, I think only threw the ball 11 times against Penn State. So again, Big Ten really had a down year with quarterbacks, really didn't have that many opportunities to show what he could do. And then the few opportunities that he did have, he didn't necessarily take advantage of it. Didn't play in the Peach Bowl against Ole Miss, which would have been a great opportunity to maybe have, an opportunity to get some of that draft stock back against an Ole Miss team that threw the ball all over the place, but elected not to play in that game.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot to break down from what was a great season to obviously a very tough season for Kalen King. But Daire, do you have any questions for Corey maybe in terms of King and anything on your mind?
I think we kind of hit it all on King. One question I did had just came to my mind for Corey while he's here, and he's such a big Penn State guy, is obviously Sean Clifford is the backup QB for the Packers. I got the chance to talk to Sean in Vegas, and he's such a cool guy, so down to earth. I really, really like the way he carries himself and handles his business. But yeah, what's your thoughts on Sean and his chances of becoming a starting QB someday in the NFL? I know he's He's not essentially young for a developmental QB, but man, he has all the experience. He's the all-time leader in Penn State passing yards, obviously. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there was probably about a 2-year stint where the Penn State fan base was very divided on Sean Clifford. I mean, at the end of it, going out with the Rose Bowl win and everything else, everyone obviously was a fan at the end. But there was some really, really dark times for Sean Clifford at Penn State. I mean, he was benched in the 2020 season for Will Levis that first couple games there. So a roller coaster of a ride. I probably was more on the Sean Clifford train than a lot of people. A lot of people going into that 2020 season, by the time they got to Ohio State, wanted Drew Aller to play as a true freshman over Sean Clifford because they thought, what's there to lose? Sean Clifford brings more to the table on a intangible side of things than I think a lot of people give him credit for. He doesn't have the amazing arm strength. He doesn't have precise accuracy, and he's not a burner, but he does all of those things decently well. And you never feel like you're out of a game when Sean Clifford's there. Now, he might have put you in a bad situation 2 drives ago, but you never feel like you're completely out of the game. For Packers fans, it's very much a Brett Favre kind of feeling to this, where he might make an incredible play one drive and then kind of come back and make a head-scratching play the next drive, but you kind of live and die by that.
Yeah, I think a lot of Packer fans last year during preseason and training camp were making some Brett Favre comparisons to Sean Clifford. A lot of people. I remember being there, hearing some fans calling for Sean Clifford to be the starter over Jordan Love. So that was always.
He is the all-time leader in passer rating in NFL history.
Oh yeah, that is true. That is
yeah,
true.
And he left Penn State. It took him a while, but he left Penn State with all of the records as well. So, he's. A lot of people didn't think he'd even make it to the NFL. I mean, he's going to work hard. He's going to make the most of his opportunities, but he's never going to fail because he didn't give it all, for better or worse, which I guess is all you can ask for from a guy like that.
Yeah, no, that's really all you really could, especially any late round pick. Just go give it your all. But real quick before we finish up, just to get back to Kalen King, there's a lot of talk about whether or not he'll end up being a nickel maybe in the NFL or being on the outside. Do you think maybe he would have more success playing inside in the NFL, or do you see him more as a boundary guy?
I think he's more of a boundary guy just because that's pretty much what he played at Penn State. One thing that does concern me a little bit is his ability to tackle in space. He was never the best tackler at Penn State. I honestly think, I don't know where you guys are at with Jaire Alexander, but having him be your number 2 corner at some point is something that I think could happen down the road if he can get his confidence back. I don't think he's meant to be a number 1 guy, shut down their best player, but if he has some support and he has, another corner on the other side to take the number 1 guy, I think he can complement that piece really well. But playing inside a little bit more makes me a little bit nervous just because he's going to have to get a little bit more, his hands dirty a little bit more. And I tend to think he likes to play more pass covers than anything else. I also don't really remember him playing against very many tight ends and whatnot, which could be a challenge for him.
Yeah. And then I guess lastly, were you surprised as the draft was going? How surprised were you as you just continued to see his name not being called? Where did you before the draft kind of think he was going to get drafted?
Yeah, I did put out there what I thought. I can't remember. I knew he was going to be a day 3 guy at that point before the draft actually started. I didn't think he was going to be 5 picks to the end of the draft. I didn't think he was going to go that late. I did think he was going to go before another Penn State defensive back, Daquan Hardy. But Daquan Hardy has the ability to return punts and return kicks. So you kind of get something else in addition with Daquan Hardy, as well as that, as well as he played the nickel, he played the dime. So he has that little bit of flexibility that King maybe hasn't shown on tape yet. But no, I mean, I thought he was going to go late. I didn't think he was going to go that late. And the bottom line is, as far as the 7th round goes, huge steal from a physical trait perspective, huge steal. Is he going to get it all together and figure it out? Who knows? But in the 7th round, I don't really know if you can ask for, again, a guy who was projected to go in the 1st round a year ago, getting him in the 7th round, and not because of any injury or anything like that, just because he didn't run very fast at the combine and didn't have a couple good days against Marvin Harrison and a couple other receivers. I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of upside for getting him. And again, what does it say about the Packers wanting to get him before the draft is over, right? Because there's probably going to be a couple suitors out there. Getting that pick solidifies their chances to see what he can do. I think it was a really smart investment.
Yeah, I'm sure there were many teams waiting for the draft to end to jump at Kalen King as a UDFA. But Corey, really appreciate it. You taking the time. Obviously, Daire, you as well. Before we finish up here, Daire, why don't you just let everyone know where they can find you, the work you're working on. Obviously, constantly putting out great stuff over at Packer Report that I'm always interested in reading. But let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, if you can figure out how to spell my name, it's at Daire Carragher on Twitter, or X, or whatever they call it these days. But yeah, listen, really appreciate the time, Eli. It's always a treat to get talking Packers, even if it's in the middle of the night over here in Ireland. But we'll take it every time. Thank you so much, Eli.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it, and definitely hope you can get some sleep soon. And Corey, again, thank you so much for coming on, and just let everyone know where they could find all your work and what you're really working on during this off season.
Yeah, Hardcore PSUFB on X is the best place to find us. This is one of my favorite times in the year because everyone starts to exaggerate and kind of freak out a little bit as far as what's going to come in the next 3 months. We're in the middle of official visit season, so things get fun on the recruiting end. But no, thank you guys so much for the time, Eli. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope the recruiting goes well over at Penn State. Everyone, thank you for watching. As you see at the bottom of the screen, make sure to follow the show over on Twitter at @thepack_show. And you can find me on Twitter at @bookofeli_NFL. But as always, everyone, appreciate you for coming in. We'll see you next time, and go Pack Go.